I'd like to welcome everyone to this live event. I want to thank you all for coming. And for those who are watching it on the replay, a very hearty welcome to you as well. My name is Shelley Astroff, and in the book, The Ultimate Guide to Self-Healing Techniques, I wrote Chapter 6, Simple Meditation. I want to thank Laura DeFranco so much because all of this, the book and these live streams, they are all the outcome of her vision and her efforts. I also want to thank all my fellow co-authors for this absolutely wonderful achievement. Before I begin, I want to thank everyone for purchasing the book. And I know that you're going to love it if you haven't finished reading it. But I also want to mention that if you haven't yet left your wonderful Amazon review, after this event is over, you can take a moment and go to the Amazon book page and leave your review, and that would just be great. So also, if any of you have read my book, The Knower Curriculum or Timeless Tales, you can feel free to comment on that as well, and you can leave a comment on our website about my book. And there's just one more thing before we begin. I want to mention that my son Jared and I we have a website called The Knower Curriculum, and we have developed a private club called the Knower Club that will be launching next week. But for this 1 week, we're just for everybody here, we have a pre-launch special, and I'll talk about that later on after I'm finished this. Okay, let's get started. So, on the wall of the university that my husband went to, he came home one day and he saw a sign and it said, "Improve your marks, learn to meditate." And that's when he started to meditate. I was a grade 2 teacher in an inner city school at the time, and I was told that my inner city students were not expected to meet the same academic standards as students from schools in the better economic districts. So I thought, well, what do I have to lose? If meditation can improve the marks of a graduate student, then certainly let's see what they can do for inner city children. So this was about 1975, 1976. I was a very new teacher and I was really excited to try out all sorts of new things. And at that time, meditation was not known as any kind of scholastic technique. So with the help of my school psychologist, we did it together and we tried out simple meditation techniques 3 times a week with my grade 2 class. It was actually amazing. That first class, that first year, they actually met the school board's academic guidelines, which was a miracle in itself. But my next year's class and thereafter, they surpassed the guidelines. And I went on to teach in different schools and in private schools and exclusive schools in Montreal. And meditation always was with me and my students, and it served them well. So what I want to really say about this is, whoever put up the sign, "Improve your marks, learn to meditate," they were right. I saw that meditation actually made all of my students smarter. So I've spent over 40 years immersing myself in the practice of meditation. And I was fortunate enough to find a teacher who was a true meditation master. I can honestly say that I learned from the best. I remember when I made my first courageous decision. I wanted to bring my son, who was just a little boy at the time, with me to India to immerse myself in meditation with this master. My family had a very different idea, and they were not shy about letting me know what they were thinking. My inner voice was screaming. I never experienced anything like it before. I knew that I would find the purpose of my life there. And that was the first time ever that I chose me. That decision set the stage for learning how to make brave choices. It took way more courage than I realized to go with my gut. And as a result, I learned to trust my authentic, which was the knower within. And now, more than 40 years later, I can say it was the best decision that I ever made. Okay, I'd like to start out by defining meditation. Meditation is an ancient practice. It's a science and a philosophy that is called Dhyan Yoga in Sanskrit. It refers to the entire process of evolving the intelligence of a human being to the state of self-realization, the state of knower consciousness. We more commonly refer to meditation as a variety of practices and techniques, which it also is. And there are many styles and many techniques of meditation. And when we sit and close our eyes to meditate, several techniques can actually happen all during a single sitting. Most important is that we should be comfortable and easy. The style of meditation that I'm presenting tonight, or sorry, for me it's night, for you it's morning, is knower meditation. This technique of meditation I learned from my teacher. It's natural, it's simple, it's effective, and it's powerful. And it can also be incorporated in any meditation technique very easily. You don't have to change anything that you're doing. You just add the knower. In knower meditation, we make the distinction between what we think with our mind, which are thoughts that are changing, and what we know with our being, which is the one watching the changing thoughts. That one is unchanging. So these are the main elements of knower meditation: the mind as a changing mechanism, and the knower, which is your authentic you, the unchanging one watching. For purposes of knower meditation, I want to define the mind. I'll define what the knower is later on. The mind is an amazing instrument. It receives its input from the five senses, from sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell, as well as from family, society, events, circumstances, happenings. But the mind is like a camera. It can record the images, but it cannot know what is beyond itself. The camera cannot know the photographer. It cannot know the one who is taking the photo. In the same way, the mind cannot know the knower who is watching it. You know the knower because you are the knower. The mind has thoughts, and thoughts change. Your thoughts will come, they'll stay for some time, and then they'll go. So thoughts will begin, hang out in your head. You might even say that your thoughts are born and live out their life in your mind for some time, and then they'll dissolve. But thoughts also influence you. They pull you into believing them. And most often, we believe what our thoughts present to us as if they were real. We tend to believe our thoughts to be our reality. We may agree with our thoughts, or we may not agree with our thoughts, but we take them to be real. We are being pulled into a reality that is constantly changing. It's mind's reality. It's constantly changing. So whatever information comes to the mind, we believe it. And when new information is introduced, we adjust to assimilate and incorporate that new information into our belief system. And that's why we are always changing our minds, because it's totally natural. But our reality then becomes confined to our thinking, which is always changing. But just knowing that situations and circumstances are always changing gives a heads up so we can ride out the difficult times. Because if I know that those crappy moments are temporary, then knowing that they're temporary, I'll know that they'll change. So with every new thought comes a new and altered belief system or reality. For those of you who were the authors of the book, perhaps you'll remember on April 30th, we had our book launch, and it was really exciting. And I think most of my friends remember me talking about it as well. I was glued to my phone and my computer, and we were all posting like mad, watching the ratings of our book, The Ultimate Guide to Self-Healing Techniques, as it made its debut on the Amazon scene. We were all in different parts of the world focused on this single event, and everyone involved in the book launch. We were all so happy when the book rose to number 1 in a category and disappointed when it dropped in a category. And every time I heard a number of where it was, I never doubted the truth of the listing, which was constantly changing. So first we were number 5, and then we were number 1, and then we were 14, and then we were back up to 1. All that was changing, but I always consistently believed that that was real. I do remember that there was the Mediterranean Cookbook was number 1, and we kind of couldn't knock that one out. Anyway, with every new information that our mind receives, our reality was altered just a bit. That is the nature of the mind. It changes and it adjusts as it meets the new information that comes before it. The nature of the mind is that it behaves according to patterns or habits. And every mind has its own particular and peculiar set of habits. That's why meditation is such a personal work. If we study our own pattern of thinking, we're able to recognize the thinking patterns, try and find it. Now, not every habit or pattern is a bad thing. So the habits that are good, we just leave them alone because they work for us. We only pay attention to the habits that bind us, and the habits that don't work for us or work for our betterment. But the knower is never confined, it's never bound by any thinking of any mind. And meditation on the knower can inspire, influence, and expand the mind's vision for our well-being. The knower is our authentic self. So now I'm going to define the knower. Imagine a beautiful masterpiece painting. The knower is like the canvas on which the artist painted that beautiful masterpiece. But when we view the painting, We pay attention to the forms, to the shapes, to the objects, to the colors, the brushstrokes, the background spaces. We even pay attention to how the painting makes us feel. But a painting cannot exist without the canvas on which it is painted. I'd like to say that the background canvas is equivalent to the knower. The artist's canvas is there before the artist begins to apply the colors to the canvas. And in the same way, the knower state is there as the canvas of life before the mind and the senses begin to apply their colors in the form of thoughts, concepts, ideas, and perceptions that paint our individual lives on the knower canvas. So the knower is always there. It's there before, it's there during, and it's there after we begin and live our lives. Now, there's a subtle distinction between the changing mind and the unchanging knower, and that gets sorted out through meditation. So I thought we could give that a try right now, and I think everybody is muted. So just sit comfortably and close your eyes and just relax. You're listening, and then it may happen that a thought enters your mind. Just let the thought come. You don't have to engage with the content of the thought. Just recognize that it appeared all by itself. It will stay for some time, and then it will disappear, and it may make way for a new thought to come. Now, try to focus your attention on who is watching the thought. The one watching is your authentic you, the knower. In meditation, we can transform our thinking into knowing as we come to recognize that there is a knower of the mind and senses. The knower is your real, authentic self. That one that watches is unchanging. Now, unchanging means that it has no beginning, it has no end. It hasn't been created, and so it cannot be destroyed. I'm going to go so far as to say it cannot die because it has never been born. It is eternal, it is unchanging, and it is forever. This is the real, authentic you, the knower, who you are meeting in meditation. I'll just be quiet for a moment. You can take your own time, and when it feels right for you to begin to open your eyes, you can do so, but take it slowly and take it easily as you readjust to your waking state of consciousness. Now, We used to come out of meditation by rubbing our hands together and cupping our eyes and washing our face. But with this whole pandemic, I think we'll just skip that. So the principles of knower meditation are straightforward and they're simple. The mind is changing and it creates a believable reality. And the knower is unchanging, and it is the subtle background space, the source, and the knower is actually the real reality on which the mind's reality plays out. I want to mention something about regularity in meditation. You don't have to be punctual and you don't have to sit for an exact amount of time, but it is important to be regular because meditation is a power that builds on itself. So try to sit every day for whatever amount of time feels comfortable, because meditation is very personal. It's a very personal practice. And you'll find out for yourself what suits you. And it will always change according to what kind of day you've had and what kind of mood you're in. But just if you can remember to meditate at least once in a day, even for 7 minutes, that would be great. Because it's through meditation that the knower is revealed to you. So continuing to place your attention on the one who is having the thoughts, rather than becoming involved in the thoughts, that is what builds a great power in you. And that power is built through regularity. Knower meditation is not just a meditation technique. It's a recipe for a healthy, happy, expanded, and smarter approach to your life, because you learn to expand your mind's waking state vision through watching the patterns of your thinking process. Your patterns of thinking are just habits that have been developed, and you don't have to be bound by them. You can free up yourself from conclusions. You don't have to change any of the thoughts that you have, but by observing and recognizing the patterns, then that detached observation, you're able to have a more expanded vision. It's like entering a room and the room is completely dark and you're looking for something. It's not that when you walk in, you go and you push away the darkness. You just simply turn on the light. So by adding the knowledge of the knower, that is like turning on the light in your head. So way too many years ago, my teacher suggested that I write a book that would combine my education with meditation. And he gave that book a title. He called it The Knower Curriculum. And over these many, many years, I worked on it sporadically. And in the back of my mind, I always knew that I really should complete it, because he didn't often give direct advice. But when he did, it was definitely for the growth of that person. So 2 summers ago, my back went out and I was having trouble walking, and anybody who that's happened to, you know what I mean. I pulled out my manuscript. I set myself up on the floor. I had pillows position and with my computer on a stand, and I spent that entire summer immersing myself in completing that book. And I couldn't go anywhere. It's almost as if my back went out just so I would have that time to complete the book. And when it was done, I realized what had happened to me. That book made me whole. I had been so traumatized by my family that continued reaction of me coming to India, it took so many years for that to be worked out. And the education book that started out being a university dissertation, and because of all the difficulties, I kind of dropped that part of it. But in reacquainting myself with the book, I came to appreciate that girl in me that I left behind so many years ago, the one who had been a grade school teacher, the one who had been a professor of education. And I started to see that the time I spent in India, I had just immersed myself in meditation, in study, in Vedanta philosophy, in studying my mind. And finally, all the things worked out with my family. But in the end, the book, the Knower Curriculum, I saw was a collaboration of the loves of my life in the East and my life in the West. My life in my world of education that I loved, and my life in the world of spirituality and meditation, which I equally loved. So that book is really all me. And writing that book made me whole and healed. I just wanted to share that little bit of me with you. It was the practice of meditation, trusting my knower, and studying my mind and its patterns that helped to transform my outlook. The principles of knower meditation are simple, but our minds are very judgy. I watched as my mind judged my actions, judged my behaviors, and always said I was right or I was wrong. I was good or I was bad. But what really saved me was knowing that this is the nature of mind. It will judge and it will change, but that's not me. That is not who I am. So I urge you, if you can, get acquainted with yourself, the authentic you, the knower of who you are, and learn to identify with that knower, because it will always guide you towards your own well-being, because its nature is intelligence and delight. And with every meditation that your mind immerses itself in with the knower, the mind gets bathed and colored and saturated in the nature of delight and intelligence. Each person's mind develops its own patterns of behavior, and that's why it's so important for each one to observe your own patterns and do it in the way that makes you feel the best. It's through this practice that we can start to step outside of our habitual thinking patterns, and we might be surprised by what we find. I wanted to mention something interesting that happened at our Meditation Institute many years ago. We often had a variety of very interesting visitors, and one of the visitors was a very well-known eye surgeon. And in our satsang, or in our gathering, he told the story of how meditation saved his surgery. He said that he was in the operating theater doing surgery on the patient's eye when some unexpected happening occurred. And there he was. He talked about this. He said he was faced with a situation. Now, what to do? He said that he told everyone to stop what they were doing. And he said he stood still and closed his eyes for maybe 30 seconds. And in that time, a very new solution presented itself to him. The surgery resumed, and it was a huge success. So when we go outside of our habitual thinking and training, we are able to see something else, and we're able to open up a new type of solution. Knower meditation can be used during any other meditation. So if, for example, if you're watching your breath in meditation, you can at some point turn your attention and watch who it is who is breathing. You can watch who is pushing the cart in the grocery store. Always placing your attention on the knower, it deepens your practice and it strengthens the power of you as the knower. Because that is your authentic self. It's your internal guidance system, and it operates for your well-being. Well, a person is never too old or never too young to meditate. And I mentioned that I wrote this book, The Knower Curriculum, which is a holistic approach to incorporating meditation, yoga disciplines, and educational practices. And I wrote it with the elementary student in mind. That had been my specialty. After having been a classroom teacher, I had gone on to graduate school and became a curriculum specialist. So the book is kind of organized in a very schooly kind of way. In the first part of the book, it's called Curriculum and Instruction, and it presents the 5 subjects, which are philosophy of the mind, the knower, and meditation. And it goes on to presenting the breath with exercises, which are pranayama, sound, which is mantra, the play of body, which are hatha yoga exercises, and lots of fun games and activities. And the second part of the book is implementation, and it consists of 9 insightful stories that I call timeless tales. And each of the timeless tales has a very specific theme that can be explored. And themes are like, one theme is on habit, one is on being alert, there's one on how to deal with criticism, there's one on the power of thought. Anyway, all these stories I heard from my teacher, and they were mostly responses to questions or complaints that people would ask how to deal with this and how to deal with that situation. And my teacher, he had the knack of telling a tale that would not only totally capture our attention, but it would expand our vision, our knowledge, and our awareness. So with every timeless tale, there's a selection of activities from every chapter, their vocabulary words and discussion ideas and theme-related meditations and pranayama activities, mantras, and all of that. And you don't even have to make a lesson plan because everything is just kind of laid out for you. It's a whole program of materials that when I was teaching, I feel like it took over 40 years for me to figure all of this out. So I know that some of my friends who have the book, they told me that they actually use it with their adult classes. So it's very, very versatile. Anyway, it's really fun, and the insightful stories are just fantastic.